The United States loves to be presented as the richest country on the planet, the giant with the world's largest GDP, the land of technology, innovation, extravagant food, and cities that never sleep. But that's only half the story. When you look at the whole map, you discover that there is another country hidden within the country itself, and that's the one we're going to get to know now. Today, Bello Mundo will take you to discover the 10 states that don't follow the superpowers shine. Number 10. Tennessee. We start this list with Tennessee, a state located in the southeastern United States. It may not seem like it, but the birthplace of country music, soul music, and blues is also home to deep pockets of poverty. And this is not a recent phenomenon. The state has a population of about 7 million people, divided between large cities such as Nashville, Memphis, and Knoxville, and a huge number of small towns, where time passes more slowly. The state's economy revolves around services, tourism, a few universities, and an important industrial sector, especially in the automotive industry. But even with factories like Volkswagen's in Chattanooga, the money doesn't reach everyone. On average, about 14% of the population lives below the poverty line, and that number skyrockets when we look at rural areas and suburban neighborhoods. Memphis, for example, in addition to carrying the weight of a giant cultural history, also consistently ranks among the most violent cities in the United States. And this has a direct impact on the economy. Companies leave, investment decreases, unemployment rises, and all of this feeds the cycle of poverty. Number 9. New York. Seeing New York on a poverty list always causes confusion, so it's good to make everything very clear from the start. That famous scene of skyscrapers, yellow taxis, giant New Year's Eve celebrations, and the Statue of Liberty is New York City, not the state. And it is precisely when we look beyond the Big Apple that the reality changes completely. The state of New York is located in the northeastern United States, bordering Canada and the states of Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. It has just over 19 million inhabitants, but most of them live in areas that have nothing to do with tourist glamour. And it is in these regions that problems arise. When you head inland, you arrive in cities like Buffalo, which is in the far west of the state, near the border with Canada. It is a city that was once an industrial powerhouse, famous for its steel production and for being home to thousands of metal workers. Then there is Rochester, further north, known for being the headquarters of Kodak and for sustaining much of the local economy with technology and photography, until it all collapsed. And then there is Albany, the capital, which functions more as an administrative center than as a strong economic hub. These cities make up the state's former industrial belt, a region that prospered in the last century but went into decline when factories closed, companies moved out of the country, and the entire economic model that sustained local life collapsed. The result of this decline is still visible today. Abandoned buildings, worn-out infrastructure, shrinking commerce, and poverty that persists from generation to generation. The poverty rate in the state exceeds 14%, and in inland cities it is close to 20%. Contrary to the global image associated with the name New York, the state as a whole experiences enormous inequality. Number 8. Arkansas. In 9th place is Arkansas, a state located in the southern United States, between Mississippi and the Ozark Mountains. And what is most striking here is the size of the gap between what the state has and what it offers its population. Arkansas has just over 3 million inhabitants and is known as the birthplace of Walmart. The largest retailer on the planet was born in the city of Bentonville and continues to have its headquarters there. However, The fortune of Sam Walton and company remained concentrated only in this bubble that lives in a parallel reality. The rest of the state continues to struggle against the tide. The local economy is heavily dependent on agriculture and livestock, especially the production of chickens, corn, soybeans, and cotton. But it is low-margin production, with low wages and little prospect for growth. Industry is limited and public infrastructure has aged. The result? A poverty rate that exceeds 15%, and a school enrollment rate that leaves many people behind before they even finish secondary school. In the interior of the state, there are schools where the library only functions thanks to donations from the community. There are hospitals that close due to a lack of staff. And there are towns where young people leave at 18 and never return. It is a state where those who can leave, leave, and those who stay live with a chronic lack of investment. Arkansas never had an industrial boom like other southern states. It has always been more discreet, more rural, more dependent on agriculture, and that weighs heavily. Today, even with the low cost of living, the average income remains among the lowest in the country. And if it depends on the government, it will not be the next hub of innovation anytime soon. Number 7. Oklahoma. Continuing our journey through Uncle Sam's land, we now arrive in Oklahoma, a state located in the south-central region of the United States, bordering Texas to the south and Kansas to the north. This part of America is known for its open fields, frequent tornadoes, and oil wells. But even all this energy was not enough to keep the state out of poverty. With a population of about 4 million, Oklahoma is a state that has seen glory days during the golden years of the oil industry. But this dependence has become a problem. When the price per barrel falls, the state's economy plummets. And since the state has never truly diversified, the impacts of these cycles directly affect the lives of the population. Today, about 16% of residents live in poverty. In some regions, especially on indigenous reserves and in more isolated rural areas, that number rises even higher. Oklahoma is one of the states with the largest presence of native peoples, and these communities are among the most neglected in the country. There is a lack of schools, hospitals, roads, almost everything. In addition, the state faces serious health problems. Hospitals in small towns have closed in recent years. The rate of chronic diseases is high, and the opioid epidemic has found fertile ground here, hitting already fragile families hard. Oklahoma does have its urban centers that are trying to drive growth with some industry, technology, and universities. But it is not enough. Number 6. Kentucky. In 7th place, we enter Kentucky, a state located in the southeastern United States, bordering Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, and Tennessee. Kentucky is one of those places that seems like two different states living within the same territory. There is the Kentucky of postcards, thoroughbred horses, bourbon, green hills, and the tradition of horse racing. And there is the other Kentucky, which is what really puts it on this list. The state has just over 4.5 million inhabitants, unevenly distributed between the wealthier urban areas, such as Lexington and Louisville, and the mountainous interior, where life has always been harder. It is precisely in this mountainous part, in the east of the state, that the origin of Kentucky's modern poverty lies: the coal mines. For decades, coal sustained entire cities. It was the engine of the economy, guaranteed employment, the money that drove local trade. But then the mines began to close. Machines became more efficient, demand fell, and clean energy gained momentum. The result? Entire cities collapsed economically. Families who depended on a single job, mining, found themselves without alternatives overnight. Today, Kentucky has poverty rates exceeding 16%, with some areas reaching close to 20%. In many communities, the nearest hospital is hours away. Schools have no laboratories. Buses only run when they feel like it. And opportunities seem to hide behind the mountains. Another chronic problem is education. The number of adults who complete higher education is well below the national average. This drives companies away, reduces wages, and keeps the state stuck in a rut. Number 5. West Virginia. Our next stop is located in the Appalachian region of the eastern United States. That's where we find West Virginia, a small mountainous state marked by a geography that has shaped its history and its problems. With just under 2 million inhabitants, the state has long been synonymous with coal. The state experienced its heyday between the late 19th century and the post-World War II period, when the mines were producing at high levels and jobs were plentiful. But as in Kentucky, complete dependence on a single industry is a time bomb. When coal lost its relevance, everything collapsed. The towns that lived around the mines became shadows of their former selves. Shops closed, families moved away, schools were left empty. In some regions, the population fell by half. What remained was a scenario of continuous, almost inherited poverty. The poverty rate in the state exceeds 16%, but that number does not tell the whole story. Public health faces one of the worst situations in the country. The opioid crisis has turned some cities into constant emergency zones. It is common to find reports of entire communities impacted by chemical dependency, accidents, and medical problems related to heavy work in the mines. Education also suffers. The percentage of residents with a university degree is one of the lowest in the United States, and this becomes a vicious circle. Without skilled labor, companies do not come. Without companies, there are no jobs. Without jobs, there is no way out. And so the state remains stuck in the past. Number 4. New Mexico. Continuing our journey through the poorest states, we now arrive in New Mexico, located in the southwest, bordering Texas, Arizona, and Colorado. And here, the landscape is deceptive. Cinematic deserts, historic cities, vibrant indigenous culture, but poverty that spans generations. The state has just over 2 million inhabitants, concentrated mainly in Albuquerque, Santa Fe, and Las Cruces. However, New Mexico is huge in area, and much of its population lives in small, remote communities, many of them in indigenous territories that have faced historical neglect. The economy is a curious mosaic. On the one hand, there are high-level research laboratories, such as Los Alamos and Sandia, which employ specialized scientists and technicians. On the other hand, there are entire regions dependent on subsistence agriculture, temporary jobs, and low-paying work. Cultural tourism helps, but it does not sustain the state's families. The poverty rate exceeds 18%, one of the highest in the country. And when we look at children, that rate rises even higher. In many indigenous reserves, there is a lack of access to drinking water, adequate sanitation, and schools with minimal infrastructure. Public education is fragile, and student performance reflects this. The state also faces high rates of violence, especially in Albuquerque, which frequently ranks among the most dangerous cities in the U.S. This not only deters investment, but also compromises the population's sense of security. And despite the presence of advanced scientific facilities, their impact does not spread to the rest of the state. They are separate worlds. One is high-tech, the other lacks basic necessities. Number 3. Mississippi. Taking the bronze medal, we now come to Mississippi, a state located in the southern United States, bordering Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Tennessee. Here, poverty is nothing new. It is practically part of the state's historical identity. Mississippi has about 3 million inhabitants spread across small agricultural towns, rural communities, and a few larger urban centers such as Jackson and Gulfport. The economy is based mainly on agriculture, soybeans, corn, cotton, and small food, timber, and some automotive industries. But the problem is simple. This economy yields little and sustains even less. The state is known for consistently having one of the highest poverty rates in the country, exceeding 18%. In some regions, especially the Mississippi Delta, that number is in the 30 to 40% range, comparable to rates in developing countries. And that's no exaggeration, it's pure statistics. Historically, the state has had one of the most unequal socio-economic structures in the United States since the pre-Civil War period. Slavery shaped the state completely, and when it ended, almost nothing was done to correct the inequalities. For decades, public education was neglected, investment was concentrated in a few areas, and the black population was marginalized by the system. Today, Mississippi suffers from underfunded schools, closing hospitals, shrinking small towns, and severe rates of obesity, heart disease, and infant mortality. The lack of infrastructure even affects roads and water supply. In many rural areas, living in the state means living far from everything, including opportunities. Number 2. Louisiana. Taking second place, our next stop is Louisiana, a state located in the southern United States, bordering Texas, Arkansas, and Mississippi, and bordered by the Gulf of Mexico. It is a place that blends French culture, music, cuisine, Mardi Gras, and a lot of history, but also deep poverty that appears on every socio-economic map of the country. Louisiana has just over 4.5 million inhabitants, spread across cities such as Baton Rouge, Lafayette, and of course, New Orleans. The economy revolves around the oil and gas sector, the chemical industry, and tourism, especially in the New Orleans metropolitan area, which welcomes millions of visitors every year. But all this beauty coexists with a harsh reality, a poverty rate of over 19%, one of the highest in the United States. The inequality here is striking. While tourists crowd the bars on Bourbon Street, entire neighborhoods struggle with fragile infrastructure, problematic schools, and a healthcare system that cannot cope with demand. And none of this started yesterday. The truth is that the state has carried a complicated legacy since the plantation era and has never managed to truly diversify its economy. When oil prices rise, the state breathes a sigh of relief. When they fall, everything seems to fall apart. And then there is the factor that marked generations: Hurricane Katrina. It not only destroyed homes, but also destroyed the economic base of New Orleans. Thousands of families were forced to leave, many businesses closed, and reconstruction never happened equally. The poorest neighborhoods continue to feel the effects of the disaster to this day. Louisiana also ranks high in violence, infant mortality, chronic diseases, and poor education. And when these problems coexist in the same place, poverty becomes almost permanent. The state seems to live in two worlds, one colorful and touristy, the other invisible and forgotten. Number 1. Puerto Rico. Occupying our first place is the most unusual case on the entire list. Puerto Rico, which is not officially a state, but a territory of the United States, located in the Caribbean, east of the Dominican Republic. Even so, it needs to be here because its economic situation is impossible to ignore. Puerto Rico has just over 3 million inhabitants, concentrated mainly in 3 cities: San Juan, Ponce, and Mayagüez. During the 20th century, the island's economy underwent major transformations. First, it lived off sugarcane and coffee. Then, in the 60s and 70s, it became a hub for manufacturing and pharmaceutical industries thanks to massive tax incentives. It seemed that the island was about to take off, but the takeoff was short-lived. When these incentives ended, companies abandoned the island. Hundreds of factories closed their doors. The local government incurred enormous debts in an attempt to keep services running. And before long, Puerto Rico plunged into an absurd fiscal crisis. Today, the island carries a debt of over $70 billion, an enormous amount for such a small economy. And this affects everything: schools, hospitals, infrastructure, transport. Puerto Rico's poverty rate is alarming. Almost 40% of the population lives below the poverty line, and in some rural areas, that number is even higher. It is a level of poverty that does not exist in any state on the mainland. Inequality here is enormous, and unemployment is a constant problem. In addition, Puerto Rico is vulnerable to natural disasters. Hurricane Maria in 2017 destroyed much of the island, left entire communities without power for months, and further deepened the economic crisis. And as a territory, Puerto Rico has less political power and less access to federal resources than states. The island is a beautiful place, full of culture, history, and strong identity. But it is also one of the most challenging places to live under the American flag. For all these reasons, it easily takes first place on this list. And with that, we close our list. Now tell me, did any of these states surprise you? Comment below, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.